What's going on, guys? This is Benjamin Bok Choi bringing you an F1 22 video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the featured event at Spa, and as you can see on screen in a moment, it is a wet race, or at least starting on full wets, going on to inters after the first lap, and then a few dry laps at the end. So this setup that I'm using is a dry setup. It's just the time trial world record setup with the wings set to 14 in the front and 12 in the back, I believe it was, and then tire pressures lowered a little bit. I'm not quite sure. I do click through it really fast at the beginning, so you can take a look through that if you want to, but this was rather difficult, as any rain race would be for me, or wet race I should say. So starting off, trying to get out in front of Yuki Tsunoda, just so that we can kind of use Norris as a lap guide here. So I always try to overtake Tsunoda at first. I notice that when I do pit for the inters, I always get passed by Zhou Guanyu. So always try to get in front of Yuki Tsunoda and then use Norris as a barometer for my pace here. Usually if I stay close enough to Norris's gearbox, then I should be able to get out in front of Zhou Guanyu when we pit, which is really important since Zhou is on the full wets. So a little bit of strategy going into this. I'm not amazing at these changeable conditions, mainly because I'm not really good at creating an optimal setup here. So you will be starting one lap on the full wets, starting P10, quickly up to P9 for us, one lap of full wets, and then about a half a dozen or so laps on the inters, and then you will get maybe 3 full laps of dry running at the end. So like I said, I'm not really great at making setups for these kind of races, with these kind of conditions I should say. After the first lap here, changing on to the inters. Now the full wet setup, if you're using like the full wet setup from time trials, is just a too high downforce, especially when you change onto the inters, and then especially on the dries at the end. I think the world record setup is like 28.16 or 28.18 or something like that. I might be wrong, but I know the front wing is 28 and the rear wing is like in the middle teens somewhere. So obviously that's not going to work since you're only in full wets for one lap. And luckily for us, we managed to get out in front of Zhou Guanyu. So next object here is to just catch up to Albon and Vettel. Trying to get up to Albon before he gets up to Vettel, because Vettel is on full wets, Albon is on inters, and they're going to start going in wheel to wheel into corners, which will make it really difficult for you to pass. So if you do have the pace, try and use as much overtake as you can to catch up to Albon. Overtake Albon first, and then you should have a pretty easy go at Vettel. So this was one of the better races for me when talking about catching up to Albon and Vettel here. Vettel kind of gets unsettled a little bit as they fight through that right-hander, and then we managed to take advantage of his wet tires and poor positioning to get by him there. And then next, Albon is not exactly quick. He's in a Williams worst car on the grid, so it's not too difficult to get by him. So yeah, really important here to kind of compromise your setup so that you're not super slow on that first lap, because if you are really slow on that first lap on the full wets, you'll probably get passed by Zhou Guanyu, who will ultimately slow you down even more. If you spend one entire lap behind Zhou Guanyu, it'll be really difficult to catch up to the rest of the cars up front. This is at 105 AI difficulty, and I just barely beat it by a few seconds. So yeah, it's really difficult for me. I don't generally race in the rain anyway. As you can see, I'm still using the Racing Line Assist for those of you who aren't familiar with my videos. So I'm not really that good at this game. In the dry, I can race 105 and do quite well, but once it starts raining, or just any rain in general, I'm not that great. So you'll have to compromise your setup a little bit, somewhere between the dry setup and obviously the full wet setup. Will be good. You don't want to just go straight up dry, because then you'll lose a whole bunch of time on that first full wet lap, and then the ensuing 6 laps on inters, and then obviously you'll be super quick in the last 3 laps, but then you'll it might not even matter, as you'll be too far back to really do anything. So I think 14-12 was a decent compromise. Now you can see we start catching up to the next train of cars here, passing Tsunoda, who we originally passed on the first lap. Norris, Ocon still on the full wets, so it is imperative that you get out in front of these guys here so that you're not losing time to guys like Bottas, who is a few positions ahead. So on the minimap, you'll see Perez out in front, and then Hamilton in P2. They will stay on the inters till the end, but everybody else behind them, Ocon here, Magnussen, Bottas. I think there's Alonso and Mick Schumacher in the train up ahead too. Everybody will change onto the softs starting at the end of this lap. So that's why it is imperative that you get out in front of Ocon here. Almost losing it, almost sending Ocon out into the barriers, but we managed to squeeze ourselves in there on the inside and get by him. Luckily, like I said, everybody is on the full wets immediately in front of you here, so Magnussen shouldn't be too difficult to get by either. Just kind of get a good exit on this right-hander here, and then just throw on the overtake, going into the back of him a little bit as he is on the full wets and navigating through this part of the track really slowly. Again, almost losing control there, but we managed to keep it on the track. And as you can see now, coming into the bus stop chicane, 3 of the 4 cars ahead will jump into the pits as we are about to start lap 32 here. Only Mick Schumacher, I think that's Mick Schumacher, right? Yeah, that's Mick Schumacher there, staying out for one more lap on the inters. Everybody else behind going on to the softs, and boy, are they quick when they change onto the dry tires. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So we've jumped ahead to lap 43 now, and as you can see, Bottas and Gasly on the soft compound tires already have worked their way up to only about 12 or so seconds behind us. Everybody else ahead, Perez, Hamilton, finishing on the inters. I decided to finish on the inters as well. I did try a few races where I stopped and switched over onto the soft compound tires, but I could never get myself in front of Bottas, Gasly, and Alonso before getting into the pits. I would always enter the pits behind them, and they must have a dry setup on, or like a full dry setup on or something, because with 14-12 wings, I just could not catch up to them at 105 difficulty. So AI is always kind of OP in straight line speed anyway, and then in the wet, it's even more OP. I even at like 103 difficulty, it was kind of a little hard for me to keep up with them. So I'm not quite sure if they've still OP, and Cody's just never fixed that straight line speed glitch that they have going on. But yeah, if I switched onto the softs and tried to catch up to them in the last 3 laps there, it was just never going to happen. So the only way for me to complete this was to stay on the inters and then just hope to God that I could stay out in front of them for the last 3 laps or so. And it looks like they're closing in about 3 seconds a lap, and we only have 4 laps to kind of make sure that we stay out in front of them and don't let them catch up. But as you can see here, we're starting our final lap, and they are 8.5 seconds back. Obviously, if you're not switching onto the softs, you're not going to be getting the fastest lap, so don't even bother trying. I did manage to get the fastest lap on the inters a few times before everybody switched onto the dries, but once they switched onto the dries, there really was no competition there anyway. So if you get the fastest lap in the race, that is a whole bunch more points that you will earn towards your final score. But never changing onto the softs, we never had a chance to do that anyway. I'm just happy to finish this, completing the goals that are required by this featured event. So as much as I do love these things, can't really say I enjoy racing in the rain. I think a few months back there was another one at Imola in the rain as well, and then there was one at like Australia in the rain before that, and it's just yeah, I don't know. I hate racing in the rain. I'm not that good. I probably could spend a little bit more time, and I feel like after about 30 minutes of doing racing on the inters and full wets, I did kind of start to get a handle of it a little bit. But after having not played this game for like 2 or 3 months and then just getting back into it a week or two ago, racing in the wet weather was just a little bit too difficult for me. But you only need to get back up to P3, or only need to get up to P3 to complete this featured event, and we managed to do so and managed to finish about 4 seconds or so in front of Gasly and Bottas. So it was quite fun. I probably could have done without the rain, but we managed to do this anyway. It took us a little while longer than usual, obviously, just because I'm absolute shit with the wet weather racing. But yeah, there you go, guys. I know this is Friday, and probably won't help out too many of you guys. It's kind of late, and most of you probably won't see this before this featured event disappears anyway. But I figured I'd put this up here since we recorded it and finished it. It was good enough to place, I think it was like 51. Just finished it on a Friday night on the 23rd. I doubt too many people will be playing this game on Christmas Eve and Christmas anyway, at least in the North America and Europe, which is pretty much where the majority of people play this game. Oh, South America too as well. So probably won't be getting too many more people playing this over the weekend, as it is Christmas Eve and Christmas, but I figured I'd put it up there for you guys anyway. So if you think I've earned it, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. Stay tuned for more. Remember to eat your bok choy. I will see you guys in the next one.